are locked into Germany's undisputed #1 wrestling podcast. Every week, we are hitting the mainstream from every angle alongside the biggest guests in the game. Enjoy tonight's main event, Spotfight's signature podcast, HAUPTKAMPF.
Welcome to the Spotfight Wrestling Podcast. My name is Aaron and you're listening to our premium format, HAUPTKAMPF. If you are a regular listener, you may ask yourself, why is this guy talking in English today? Yeah, there's a reason for it, but no worries, you'll get your German HAUPTKAMPF next week and onward, so don't worry at all. And special occasions today need special treatments, and this is what we're doing today in this very special first episode of the International HAUPTKAMPF. I'll apologize in advance for my English as I'm no native speaker, but I'll do my best to keep all of you entertained anyway. Today we've got three main topics to get into. First, we'll talk about Cody Rhodes once again and whether WWE might be booking itself into a corner with increasingly predictable storytelling. Second, we're looking at the vision and asking whether the stable was doomed from the beginning. And third, we'll talk about Tony Khan's, I would say, recent signing spree in AEW. Do all these new talents actually help the company, or could they end up creating new problems? And this brings me to my guest and the reason why I speak English today. Probably the biggest international guest I could have hoped for, the ultimate wrestling optimist, the one, the only, Santi Zepp. Hi, Santi, how are you?
I'm sorry I don't speak German, so now we have to do it in English today, but thank you so much for having me on. We've been trying to organize this now for a while since we met all the way back right before...
September.
Was it All
last
Out?
year.
Yeah, right before All Out
exactly.
At an AEW Dynamite show. And you came up to me. We said, like, hey, we're going to for sure do this show. It's been like 7 months later, but here we are. And I'm excited to finally do it.
So cool to have you. Maybe for all listeners that do not know you, and I can imagine there are a few, how long have you been a wrestling fan, Santi? And how come that you decided to make content about it?
I've been a wrestling fan since 2002. I think since 2002, I've been watching every episode of Raw, SmackDown. There's a time where I got into Impact and, of course, now religiously watching WWE and AEW. There was a little dark ages there from 2008 to 2011 where I kind of stopped watching. I think everybody kind of has that time.
Has that, yeah.
Everybody has some dark ages. And I've been making wrestling content since about like 2021. But I've also been making content in general since like 2011. So I've been in the internet for a really long time trying to find a foothold in my hobbies. Back in 2011, I was making video game content, Call of Duty, and it wasn't until many years later where I decided to try wrestling content shortly after the pandemic, and it exploded. And I think I was right place, right time. It exploded when wrestling started to explode and started becoming really popular, when AEW started gaining some buzz, when WWE started getting good. So I've just been riding the wave, and here I am now. It's my full-time job.
And you were probably the right guy at the right time, at the right place, and at the right, I would say, era. But
I think
all right.
so.
So let's not waste any time because you probably don't have so many to spare today. And jump right into our first talking block. Probably the biggest topic in the wrestling world since Friday night. Cody Rhodes winning the title again on SmackDown. Now, a lot of fans, myself included, actually saw that title change coming. But the fact that WWE is once again heading into WrestleMania, main event with Cody Rhodes has definitely rubbed some people the wrong way. So I'm curious at first. Can you understand that reaction from fans?
I can understand the reaction from fans being upset about Cody winning and how we got there, because there's a lot of problems, and I'm sure we'll dissect them all. What I will not understand and tolerate is the hate for Cody Rhodes versus Randy Orton. That's a match we want. We want this for the title, especially if one of them is going to turn heel. What I said in one of my videos is that maybe the car ride is bad, but the destination is still Disney World. You know, we're still going to somewhere where we all want to go. I'm really excited for that. But how we got here, the decision to give Cody the title is really problematic, I have to say.
Yeah, it is. And look, I totally get the business side of it. From TKO's perspective, the goal is obviously to sell out 2 nights of WrestleMania in the Allegiant Stadium. And a match like, as you've said, Cody Rhodes versus Randy Orton is probably a much bigger ticket mover than any main event built around Drew McIntyre. But at the same time, after all these months where Drew has basically, I would say, carried SmackDown with some incredible character work, doesn't he deserve to be part of that WrestleMania main event in some way? Because his title reign, not even lasting 2 months, almost feels like a bit of a consolation prize, right?
I totally agree. I think we should have done one of two things. It should have been Drew somehow gets to WrestleMania as the champion so that his championship reign doesn't feel so transitional, so short. Or the simplest solution here, Aaron, was just to make him champion at WrestlePalooza, like they originally should have done. That should have absolutely been. Because think about it. From September to December, they already barely used Cody Rhodes as champion. He was filming Street Fighter. He was doing War Games for some reason as the champion. You have Crown Jewel. That time period is such a perfect time period to experiment, right? Because you have so little to lose. And had you just given the title to Drew at WrestlePalooza, and maybe he loses it now, it would have felt less like we wasted a Drew McIntyre championship reign.
Exactly. And the problem is the buzz around WrestlePalooza was in that kind of way. Hey, maybe you give the title now to Drew, have something fresh, have something that you can build on, have kind of that fresh autumn to January stretch until the Royal Rumble where everything kind of always slow down a little bit. But from my perspective, also the big title change earlier this year in the 3 Stages of Hell match in Berlin gave some fans hope that WWE wouldn't just repeat the same story they've been telling for the last few years. But as it turns out, that doesn't really seem to be the case. And it almost feels like the title change back then was also meant to take some of the heat off of Cody at that time because he wasn't getting the best reactions, I would say, which brings up another question. If we have the WrestleMania main event with Cody and Randy, shouldn't that match, and you already mentioned that, be built over a much longer period of time or just a few weeks? That we are now getting, we basically had a very similar setup up until now during the King of the Ring last year. So if you really want to make this feel like a true WrestleMania level main event, as you've mentioned, don't we actually need something bigger? You've mentioned the heel turn. Do you think that'll happen? Does that make it work?
I think we need it. I don't think it's a matter of like, would it be nice? You mentioned that we've already had this style of match of like, who's better now, the teacher or the student, the King of the Ring final? We already did that. You can't tell that story again. Now you don't have a lot of time to build a story, but luckily there's so much history between Randy and Cody Rhodes that you can do it really, really quickly. But are you aware that this is like the first WrestleMania in a long, long time to be babyface versus babyface on both nights?
Exactly.
We need somebody in one of those main events to be heel. We can't be all baby faces on both main events. So yes, I do think, especially on the ticket moving side of things, one of them needs to turn heel. I'll pass the question over to you because both are interesting scenarios. Do you turn Randy Orton heel, the guy who's a very good heel? Frankly, that's the Randy a lot of people want. Or do you do the thing that will actually probably move tickets, which is Cody moving heel? What's the one you'd like to see, or the one you think they'll do?
I think they'll do Randy because it's the obvious choice, and an RKO itself would probably be an effective heel move for the time being. And it's always kind of works with Randy not turning him in heel completely, because an RKO, no fan would bug about it. Everybody would still probably cheer for him. But from a character perspective, and Randy Orton that just told Sami Zayn, sometimes you gotta be selfish. You gotta rely on your ego a little bit more. So I think that's what they would do. What I would prefer, as you've mentioned, is obviously the Cody Rhodes heel turn, because we've seen parts of it that always were kind of intriguing to me. For example, you mentioned the King of the Ring match between both of them. Cody was the one that was able to kind of go over a certain level and kind of use Randy's back against himself. He was also the man who kind of anyways put down AJ Styles with the stairs after their I Quit match. So Cody always has that edge to it. And I think in the last months, and also with the story, and we'll come to that later on, that you're telling us that Cody shouldn't even have been in that match on Friday night. So the idea of probably a corporate Cody that kind of says, hey, I'm best for business myself because I can move tickets, I am the main event, that's intriguing to me at all. But another thing that I want to mention, and I want to have your opinion on that, is the problem with Cody's WrestleMania matches and why fans are taking that probably the wrong way. It is also a bit like since 2022, since his return to WWE, Cody has had, I would say, one feud where he kind of did things outside of the world title picture against Seth Rollins. Other than that, it was mostly finish the story and then defenses against challengers around in the world title picture. Before that, in a time, let's say the Ruthless Aggression era, guys like Chris Jericho, Shawn Michaels, Kurt Angle, or even The Undertaker didn't have to be in the main event all the time to sell tickets or to stay relevant. So why do you think WWE is being so, I'd almost say, uncreative when it comes to Cody? Why aren't they trying something more innovative with him? Is it just because it works anyway?
I think so. I think it is because it works anyway. And I do think it is the time of the year. You look at, there was an interview with Roman Reigns on the Pat McAfee show where he's basically saying WWE sucks at making new stars. They did. Where are the new stars? And then what happened immediately after that? He wins the Royal Rumble. And then another established star in Randy Orton wins the Elimination Chamber. And then two established female stars in Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley win those two matches as well. So Roman basically was proved right. He's double proved right by going with Cody Rhodes here, the standard bearer. But it's so interesting because at the very least with Rhea Ripley, who's the face of the women's division, they spent like a year telling a different story. Her in the women's division, in the women's tag team division, at least telling something different. And then, yeah, sure, we come to WrestleMania and boom, Rhea Ripley in the main event. I feel like with Rhea Ripley, at the very least, we can say, okay, well, it makes sense. She's the main event. She's the big draw putter. And she wasn't spending the whole year going after the women's world title. So it makes sense for her to be in the world title match at WrestleMania. And it makes sense for Cody as well. But I think the problem is that he didn't take that detour like Rhea did, where he went to go do something else, feud with somebody else that wasn't for the title. It's always been for the title. And especially now, this time around, it feels so forced. It makes no sense that Cody got this match. Like, none at all. No. And maybe for the casual fan, it doesn't matter. But me and you and everyone listening to the show, we're not casual fans. So we very easily notice how annoying and stupid it is, logically, that he even got this match in the first place. You know what's funny? Sami Zayn points it out. Sami Zayn's like, this makes no sense. You lost the title, you lost Royal Rumble, you lose Elimination Chamber, and now you're getting a match? So we even had a character point out how stupid it is, and they still do it anyway. It's just, it just feels forced, right? It just feels like, okay, we have to get to Cody versus Randy, so we just do it. Even though there's a contract, there's a story, just do it.
So 2 points to that, because you're absolutely right. The one thing that is bugging me is, hey, you could have tried with Cody. As you've mentioned, from WrestlePalooza probably until the Royal Rumble or Elimination Chamber, something different. Nobody would have said a word if he lost the title, then gained it back, and then came into Elimination Chamber, gained the championship when we do the Randy match anyway. But the big problem that we have right now is, as you've mentioned, on the latest, though, just to recap it, of SmackDown, it almost felt like the show was repeatedly suggestion, intentionally or not, that Cody actually shouldn't be getting another shot. We did it with Cody and we did it with Randy, and he already had his chance in the 3 Stages of Hell match, with contractually shouldn't have led to another rematch, right? Then he lost the Rumble, then he lost the Elimination Chamber. So do you think WWE might be using that narrative, as we've mentioned before, to slightly reshape Cody's character, maybe even moving towards something, as I've mentioned, like a corporate Cody, or is this mostly just a storyline, not for Cody, but kind of to make Drew McIntyre even more frustrated with Nick Aldis?
In my head, it makes sense as a perfect story to tell for Cody's heel turn. I think it makes sense. Do I have faith WWE will do it? No. I think it literally will just be a stupid plot hole. I really think that they're not going to do anything with it. I think it's just going to be a plot hole that they're just going to tell us to forget about. Don't forget about the contract. Forget about the fact that Drew McIntyre should have just hired a lawyer, because he really should have just hired a lawyer, because it was in a contract. I think they're just going to tell us to forget about it, because hey, our plan is Cody versus Randy. We had to get there in some way. We don't care.
Oh, yeah. The problem is that with such kind of angles where you kind of obviously also show why probably Cody shouldn't have gotten the shot is something that might come in bad for him, because if you look back at his history, people were turning in his past on babyface Cody. You saw that in AEW, because he was doing the same thing over and over again, not being able to kind of be a heel, or not wanting to turn heel or something like that. We will never know. But building on that, do you think there's a point where fan reactions to Cody could actually start to turn if WWE keeps presenting him in this way? So that would also be a naturally a heel turn, right? Or is it still completely safe that he will be the company's top babyface going forward?
Listen, I'm sure there's somebody here that listening to this show that's been watching wrestling since the 80s. This always happens to every top babyface in WWE. I think the only one that I've never seen it happen to is Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yep.
Where the top babyface eventually starts to get booed. It happened to Hogan. It happened to Rock. It happened to Cena. It happened to Roman. It's a circle. It will happen to Cody. It's just that WWE is almost like going at full speed to make it happen to Cody, because they're making a lot of the mistakes that have led to their top baby faces getting booed. So I do think it will happen. Now, I think there's a big divide between the internet wrestling community and those in attendance. I think we're still a while removed from those in attendance booing Cody. I've heard a little bit, though, through a little bit here or there. But I think what will end up being the tipping point, the deciding point, is if Randy turns heel and they cheer Randy, we got a problem. If Randy's the hero of the story and he's the heel, we have a problem here.
Because people don't look at it the classic way, like before, like heel face. They cheer people they like anyway, right? But a funny part that you said, and that I want just quickly mention, is all those guys that were the top babyface and got booed anyway at a certain time, the best of them capitalized on it. Rock capitalized on it, that he got booed, right? Roman, the most recent one, capitalized on it.
Hollywood Hogan
capitalized on it. The problem is with Cena, okay, I get why he didn't want to turn heel. He had all those kids and everything. Okay, I get it. But I think just Cody is not John Cena. He's not John Cena. He has more of an edge to him in his character and all that he has done. He was the face of the AEW revolution. He was the one who wanted it to stick to WWE. So for him to kind of become the corporate Cody, the WWE poster boy, is kind of a heel turn of his character in itself. So it would be just so easy to present, don't you think?
I agree. I think it would be a really easy, natural transition. It is also a different time than Cena. There was no other babyface that even came close to Cena, that had the draw, that could move the merch as Cena. Like, who was the next closest one? Randy, but Randy was heel half the time, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't until like Roman came in that they felt maybe more comfortable allowing like the baby faces turning heel. But like, if you look at like nowadays, right? If Cody turns heel, we got like 5 people ready to go that can be the new top babyface of the company. They have one right now in the main event in CM Punk. So it's not as hard nowadays to turn your top babyface heel, because you have an entire machine. But when Cena was a babyface, they did such a bad job at making another babyface. And heck, when they had one in Jeff Hardy, they got rid of him. That they had no choice but to always have Cena as a babyface. But that's not the same anymore.
No, it isn't. It isn't. But Maybe to wrap this talking block a little up, I want to bring in a question from our supporter Ruben. He's asking, and that I'll defer that question a little bit to you. How would you personally book a babyface Cody Rhodes defending his title at WrestleMania this year? Ideally, in a scenario that actually feels fresh and interesting. Is there a scenario? Do you have one?
I don't see one. I unfortunately don't see one. Because realistically, what we're looking at is Randy Orton turning heel. Oh, it was Randy Orton that took out Jacob Fatu or Jey Uso. That's not an interesting Cody. That's an interesting Randy. I can book you an interesting Randy right now. If it's babyface Cody, I can't book you an interesting Cody Rhodes, unfortunately. I mean, it would have to be Randy Orton breaking into his house, but we've seen that already lots of times.
Oh, yeah.
We saw it recently with AJ Styles and LA Knight. So I unfortunately, Ruben, I don't actually think it's possible to book an interesting babyface Cody Rhodes this year.
Maybe I'll have a take, but I would have to switch up some of the story going in beforehand. If Drew McIntyre would have kind of defended his title inside of the chamber, and Randy and Cody, just like the finishing scenario, were eliminating Drew beforehand, and they would be the sole survivors, the two, and Randy then capitalizing on that, RKOing Cody and kind of going his egoistical Viper way, that would be probably a variant to kind of give Cody a little bit of the edge back, the one who can't trust his master. Yeah, that would probably be more interesting, but always interesting babyface Cody Rhodes that comes out every week and tells you, what do you want to talk about? Yeah, nothing at all anymore. I'm sorry. That seems to be too critical, but I think people get why we're talking about Cody in a different perspective, because we see the potential of a heel Cody Rhodes for WWE.
Honestly, this, if they wanted to go with all of this, with Drew getting involved in the chamber, the slight change they should have made to, one, make it make sense, because this contract thing is a big problem, and maybe get less fan backlash, is Drew should have got involved and accidentally helped Cody win. Cody wins the chamber, and then Nick Aldis says, well, you screwed Randy, now Randy gets a match, because Randy doesn't have a contract preventing him from getting a match. Randy wins the title, and then Randy goes in as champion versus the Elimination Chamber winner, Cody Rhodes. If you still wanted to sacrifice Drew McIntyre, I feel like this would have been better in terms of making it make sense for the fans.
Yeah, you see, fantasy booking always works. We probably should be in creative, Santi. I see that. But with that, we'll try to end our first talking block. Let us know what you think about the Cody Rhodes, or Cody Rhodes winning the title and current booking around him, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Now we move on to our second topic. And that's a big talking point the last few weeks, because something I also saw you discuss on your podcast, the Wrestling School podcast, shout out, and that's the downfall of the Vision on Monday Night Raw. After WrestleMania 42 last year, it felt like one of the freshest acts in the company, probably in all of professional wrestling. But over the course of the past wrestling year, from Mania to Mania, things have really gone downhill, and not just because of injuries, I would say. So let me start with a bit of a heat check. With Bronson Reed now being injured, do you think this would have been the right moment to drop the whole angle and let Seth Rollins move on to do something completely different? Or should they still do the Logan Paul match, probably?
No, I don't think they should do the Logan Paul match. The only thing that I want to see out of this is Seth Rollins Braun Breaker. The only way you're going to sell me on this is if Braun Breaker is a superhuman and he comes back from this injury. I'm not interested in seeing Seth Rollins versus Brock Lesnar. That is not the end of the story here. The end of the story needs to be with somebody from the Vision. And if the member from the Vision and Braun Breaker is not ready, you shouldn't be running this at WrestleMania. You should have just waited until everybody was ready to come back and tell the end of the story, and not forced a WrestleMania match. But then again, they got to move tickets, so they got to have a Seth Rollins on the card. My overall heat check of this is that this story is dead, unless Braun Breaker comes back.
Yep.
That's me. That's me. I really do like Logan Paul, but I'm more interested in seeing Logan, in theory, go after the Usos, for example, for the tag titles. Logan versus Seth just doesn't move me personally. The only thing that moves me here, the only play to keep this story alive is Braun Breaker returning.
Yeah, 100%. And there have been mistakes, I would say, before all of that, because injuries, you can't plan them. Of course not. But in my opinion, one of the most crucial mistakes early on, and that was right after the Seth Rollins injury, was not to put the main focus on Braun Breaker as probably the champion and main antagonist as Seth Rollins got injured. That's what I don't get, because it was all set up and nobody would have screamed if Braun won the title on the 1-year anniversary of Raw on Netflix. Nobody would have, right?
No, but it should have just been earlier. It should have just been at Saturday night's main event. The story of the breakup of the Vision should have been Braun Breaker took his faction, took his wise man, and took his world championship because Seth had to vacate it. I don't really fully understand why. Like, they even gave him the title. He was running around with it. He would look so good with it.
He looked awesome.
And then they say you're not allowed to be in the number 1 contenders tournament or match or battle royal, whatever it is that they had. And then loses on Raw Netflix Day, like 1-year anniversary. This is the problem with long-term storytelling. Sometimes they just overcomplicate it. Sometimes you should just do the easy decision quickly. But WWE likes to hold off on the big moments for big shows. And here's a perfect example of why long-term storytelling doesn't always work. 1,000,000% Braun Breaker should have been the World Heavyweight Champion as early as Saturday night's main event in November.
You know what I always say when it comes to the comparison and young world champions and everything? Randy Orton, 2004. You would not know if Randy is ready for all the pressure of being a world champion if you haven't tried it by then. You wouldn't know if he would be the babyface or Batista was it. So put the title on Braun Breaker. If he would have gotten a title reign as long as Drew McIntyre's, nobody would have also raised the hand and say, hey, I don't agree upon that, because you could have always make him lose the title because Seth interferes when he comes back. So you have Braun and Seth having a good match. Okay, you have the hernia injury. I get it. But that would also be a proper storyline. With Braun not being in the tournament and doing, I would say, being a mid-card act or something, and also then getting eliminated, it kind of decreased the value overall of him. But do you see other moments or any decision that was just as damaging for the group?
Bronson Reed not being dominant after beating Roman Reigns. He beat Roman Reigns relatively clean, if you want to, you can say, we had some involvement from the Vision, but hey, Roman won all the time with involvement from the Bloodline, so it's only fair. The fact that they didn't follow up on Bronson Reed being like a dominant force, a proper main eventer, he's losing matches left, right, and center. He lost to Penta not that long ago before his injury. The fact that they didn't follow up with him to make him a powerful main event force like a Braun Breaker after beating Roman Reigns, I think was another mistake. The other one, the obvious one, the stupid masked man storyline with Austin Theory. Like, what? Just reveal it at the pay-per-view that people paid thousands of dollars to go to. I was there. Why is the money that everyone is paying here ending with a cliffhanger? Just reveal the mask. It's Austin Theory. Oh, that's crazy. But instead, they waited like 5 weeks to reveal it on the episode before Christmas when most people stop watching. Yeah. That's when the viewership is at the lowest. It makes no sense.
No.
So the Austin Theory reveal was really bad as well. So you're right. It's not just the injuries, because, you can't plan for those. There's no such thing as a good timed injury, but there is such thing as making bad decisions. And I think that they made several of those. Yeah.
And I think you could have presented Austin Theory in a better way. I mean, he was losing matches by week 4 of his return afterwards. So, and I mean, he brought the look. He got a good entrance theme. I really liked it, and they just forgot about him. But hear me out. Another factor for me personally, and one reason why this whole thing feels a bit flat for me on TV, and that's hard to say, but it's actually the work of Paul Heyman. It's hard for me. And look, we all know that Heyman is arguably the best mic worker in the business still. But if even Heyman, as the supposed mastermind of the group, can't really sell Braun Breaker's turn on Seth Rollins, because he really didn't didn't seem to be involved at all in that decision in any convincing way, then something clearly isn't clicking for me. Honestly, I would have even found it more fitting if Heyman had eventually been revealed as the orchestrator behind the masked attackers targeting the Vision, because he was not in on the plan of them attacking Rollins, only for him to end up back at Seth Rollins' side in the end, because that was the overall plan. But the motives that they got me for Paul Heyman weren't really good in any way for me. So do you think this story suffered from not having a clear long-term mastermind behind it? Or was the bigger problem that WWE simply didn't commit to one clear direction for the Vision?
I think it's a combination of all of those things that you said, right? Not like the clear mastermind is Seth Rollins. He goes down. You would think that the then mastermind would become a Paul Heyman. He becomes the one pulling the strings, being the puppet master. But instead, the group just became like, we're Braun Breaker, we're Bronson Reed, we break things. They lost a lot of that, like, what's the plan? We went from faking an injury to cash in at SummerSlam with the ruse of the century. We went from that to like, we just break things. We're scary. And Paul Heyman, like you said, didn't really do the group any justice, even if he's not the mastermind, right? Even if he's just the mic worker. All he does every week is, this is Braun Breaker. He's scary. He's the future. That's Bronson Reed, the master of the tsunami. That's Austin Theory, the pressure. No one calls him the pressure, by the way. And Logan Paul, the most famous man. No, we do this every week. Is just introducing the Vision every single week. So even just the general mic work of Paul Heyman just doesn't really have a direction. It's very repetitive every single week, unfortunately.
And that's not a good place for the best mic worker in the business to be at the moment. But for me, and I want to hear your opinion on that, because the big question now is, where do you go from here? Is it really a good idea to go with Logan Paul? You answered that already as the WrestleMania opponent. No, we agree on that. And we already saw that match at WrestleMania 39. 3 years ago, don't forget that. Yeah, under different circumstances, but we got it anyway. I mean, the hope would obviously be that Braun Breaker could be healthy again by then, but the impact might actually be bigger if Breaker just shows up out of nowhere on the Raw after or something and completely destroying a triumphant Rollins, giving them time to build to a proper program. But because the same, if you have it 2 weeks before WrestleMania, it doesn't feel deep, it doesn't do the story justice. So if we're sitting in the writer's room right now, what would you do? Do you rush the big Rollins versus Breaker match from Mania if Braun is ready in time, or do you let the story breathe and build it properly after Mania?
You don't have a choice. You brought back Seth. I think you rush it. I just... Because otherwise, we are going to get an underwhelming match that maybe it'll be good, like from an in-ring perspective, but it'll be really hard to get emotionally invested in Seth Rollins versus Logan Paul. I think you rush it. Even if it is just 2 weeks, I think you got to do it. I don't think that you have a choice at this point. The other alternative, which we haven't talked about, is the potential of somebody else comes in to protect Paul Heyman, that being Brock Lesnar. We know Brock Lesnar is coming back on the March 16th episode of Monday Night Raw. It was supposed to be for these open challenges and whatnot. That is a route that they could take, where Brock Lesnar returns, protects Heyman, and becomes the champion of Paul Heyman, and it's Brock Lesnar versus Seth Rollins. That we haven't seen for a while, right? I think it was WrestleMania 35. I think that was their match.
I think, were they in the opener? Was it that match?
Yeah, it was the opener, Mania 35,
okay,
when Becky Lynch main evented, and then they did, the feud throughout the year, SummerSlam match. So it's been a long time since we've seen that. That could be a big draw for sure, on the billboard, Brock Lesnar versus Seth Rollins. But even that I don't want. I really think, Aaron, it's only Braun Breaker, Seth Rollins. And maybe I'm being a selfish wrestling fan, but that to me is I think that's the only one.
Yeah, nothing else. I mean, the only scenario, and I've talked about that in the podcast for the last weeks, the only thing, but that would have included to take the Vision off of TV, would have if Seth returns and says, hey, I never lost the World Heavyweight Championship. We run the three-way back from last year, and I get my title back because I've opened problems with both of you, and now it's for the title. So different Mania, but same, or same venue but different stakes, that would have worked. But it's now too late, and Punk and Roman are much too deep in their feud anyway.
Agreed.
And I think that question that follows from this are just as interesting, because when this inevitably leads to a feud between Rollins and Breakker, who actually goes over in that scenario? Does Breakker win and establish himself as the next dominant force, or does Rollins need the victory more to reassert himself after everything that's happened with the Vision? And beyond that, where does this leave Rollins as a character? After the whole Vision chapter, could this be the moment for him to reinvent himself again and set a completely new direction? Because you can't go back to visionary Seth Rollins after that, right?
I agree. It's been pointed out many times that WWE in the men's side has never had a world champion born in the 1990s. If you have Braun Breakker lose this feud, we just continue to prove Roman Reigns right, that WWE can't make new stars. This is a guy that they've been invested in for many years. If you include everything about NXT, heck, they rebranded NXT and made him the face of it. So WWE has many years of money, time, and effort invested into Braun Breakker. If in Braun Breakker's first major feud he doesn't win, what are we doing? What was all that time for? And you said it perfectly. Seth Rollins can reinvent himself. Seth Rollins, and I don't say this lightly, is a genius. He can do anything and everything and make it work. The last guy that could do something like that was Chris Jericho, and he's still active. You know, he's still a wrestler to this day because of his ability to just be able to dynamically change and reinvent himself. Seth Rollins is exactly like that. Seth Rollins can lose, and it doesn't hurt Seth Rollins. Braun Breakker loses, all of a sudden the tower that you've built starts to crumble down, and it becomes difficult to believe in Braun Breakker as the future, as the main event moving forward if he loses this feud.
It absolutely does, because if you look at it from a time perspective, he wasn't in the tournament for being world champion at Saturday Night's main event. He didn't win on the 1-year anniversary of Raw. He was eliminated from the Royal Rumble before even really entering it, and then he got injured. So all the hype, all the momentum is at a low point. And I mean, the whole point of the Vision was not only to establish Seth Rollins, he was established, but to build two new characters. I always said, hey, if we are lucky here, we get kind of an evolution scenario 2.0. We build to something like that, where in any place in the future, we'll get the master versus student feud. And that will work out anyways. Because we see it right now, Randy Orton, Cody Rhodes, you talked about it. Master versus student always works. But if Breakker loses, I see really no scenario where you can convince me as a fan that he'll be in the main event for the next years. And you already, as you've mentioned, have a little bit of an age problem, because they're all 40 plus up, and you need some younger people to insert themselves in that.
And there's a problem for Braun Breakker in that he's no longer the only hot new star. You got Oba Femi, you got Trick Williams, all waiting, where we're just like, hey, if you're not ready with Braun Breakker, we want to see these new guys, right? So if I'm Braun Breakker, I want to establish myself as the top of this new generation of stars, because if they pass him over, then maybe it becomes Oba Femi, maybe it becomes Trick Williams, Javon Evans, another one of these new stars that is coming in. But you invested so much into Braun Breakker. You took all the right steps. You know, squashing people, Intercontinental Champion, main event faction. It should be world champion now. You took all of the right steps. Just do it. Don't overthink it.
Yeah, I think so. Because it could happen that he will probably just fall between the lines and not be recognized at all anymore. Because when you see Oba Femi and what an dominant force he is, dominant forces, they have a lot. So you get lost in the mix. So you either kind of push into that with Braun Breakker, because people forget how long he even is on the main roster. He was Intercontinental Champion last year. So and he went out of WrestleMania losing the title. So what really has he done and accomplished since then? That's not so much. But that's also kind of the wrap up to our second block. And we do a little bit of a water break, so Santi can sip a little bit on his coffee. And if you're asking yourself what I'm drinking, that's our partner of Spotfight, that's Holy. And you can also save up to 10% with our code Spotfight. And I'm drinking today a Holy energy drink. And if you want to see it, it's Wild Berry. Right? Wild Berry, you can use the promo code on that. And I also don't only use that for watching wrestling, because in Europe, you know, it's back in the night, so you have to be awake. I also use it for training and as a pre-workout. But I know you work out a lot, Santi, and that's just outside of the advertisement now. How much do you bench? I wanted to know that all the time. I wanted to know that.
Oh, I'm old now, but there was a time where I was more in my prime, in the like 350 range.
Good.
Yeah, but now I'm old. My bones, you know.
You're younger than me, right? How old are you, Santi?
I'm 32.
Yeah, I'm 34, getting 35. So come on.
Yeah,
come on.
I don't like to move over like 250. I like reps and ranges now. I don't go very heavy for me anymore.
Yeah. I was a power lifter and also going to Worlds. So that's actually when I went the first time to Canada and Calgary some years ago. But my body hurts all the time. So I need some push of caffeine all the time. I don't get up as easy and my bones hurt. But
I feel you.
Yeah. On to more exciting topics by now. We switch over to our third block. And yeah, that's now the switch over to AEW. Today we're taking a closer look at the recent shopping tour, I would call it, of Tony Khan, because since the beginning of the year, he has definitely turned some heads with a series of new signings, whether it's Jake Doyle, Jake something, the Rascals, Tommaso Ciampa, The Inspiration, or most recently, the former War Dogs of New Japan Pro Wrestling, Gabe Kidd, Clark Connors, and David Finlay. All of them now found a new home in AEW, and there are a lot of dual contracted CMLL wrestlers also, but now it's not exactly like AEW has lost a lot of talent recently, right? It's quite the opposite. And at the same time, many younger wrestlers already struggle to get regularly featured on the shows. So do you see that as a potential problem, that the company keeps adding more talent from the market? Or is this simply the natural bidding war, I would say, between WWE and AEW at this point, where both sides constantly trying to outmaneuver each other?
We've seen this before from AEW, though. This isn't new from AEW. So we have historical evidence of what tends to happen, right? Yeah. I remember that like 2021, 2022, where they were signing everybody. They had a show that ended with Adam Cole and Bryan Danielson. Like, it was crazy.
They didn't have enough shows to debut all the guys. So
I know.
Right afterwards.
In the same segment together. So we've seen this from AEW before, and it does feel like they become the new signings, the smaller ones, you know, not the Danielsons or the Adam Coles, tend to become the flavor of the month, where they have like a really strong showing and then they start to slowly disappear and then sometimes disappear altogether. There's some really extreme examples, of course, like Keith Lee, for example, is one of those really, really extreme examples. I would like to believe now, you know, that was a different AEW that was only 2-3 years old, with a lot less experience, that only had one weekly show. Now we have a far more experienced company with more backing than ever before, with all of the partnerships that they have in TV and streaming, with multiple shows. I would like to believe that now they are in a much better position to use these free agents much better. Now, I'm not saying that, you know, they're all going to get world title opportunities, but we could be looking at like, hey, look how well they're using Speedball Mike Bailey, right? On a fairly regular basis, having great matches, etc. I think they're using the Rascals very well. What I'm concerned about is their ability to maintain that for years.
Always.
Right?
The follow-up, yeah.
They're great at like, wow, look how great this person is. Look at Ciampa. Can you believe how much they wasted him in WWE? Look how awesome he is in AEW. Okay, let's talk in 6 weeks. Are we still there? Is he still awesome? Is he still fantastic? I want to see more stories like Ricochet and less stories like Keith Lee. I want to be optimistic, but we have some evidence that can make you otherwise.
Yeah, and you could argue right now in time, it doesn't feel like a huge issue yet because quite a few people are still missing from the show and younger people are getting the TV time. But if we're being honest, there are also, several big names about to return. And you're looking at guys like Will Ospreay, Jay White, Samoa Joe, and groups like the Hurt Syndicate plus veterans such as Adam Copeland, Edge, and Christian Cage. And all of them will expect and most likely receive TV time. Yeah, that's also coming our way. So what does the roster situation look like once all those names are back in the mix, especially considering that AEW Rampage ended, so 1 hour less than 2 years ago. AEW is also down that full weekly television. Is that something that might also turn some heads in the wrong ways?
In the big programs, potentially, right? But one thing that AEW does that WWE doesn't is that they have like 13 matches in every pay-per-view, right? Oh, yeah. They go on for 7 hours. So at the very least, a lot more names in the mid-card, lower mid-card can get on these bigger shows in some capacity, whether it's 0 hour or the actual main show proper. So at the very least, we can hinge on that. Even if the big names show up, that those smaller names that they've recently signed will still get that spotlight to shine. Something that, can't be said about WWE. Will it create a logjam at the top of the card? How can it not? Absolute, like 1,000,000%. It will create a problem in the main event scene in terms of TV time. But I think the saving grace is how long the pay-per-views are. They'll still be featured in those major shows, even if they get lost in the shuffle with how long the shows are.
You taking parts of my next block a little bit away from me, because I would really say exactly something like that, because sometimes for me it feels like Tony Khan is simply loving wrestling so much that he wants to give a home to everybody in AEW and to every promising talent he believes could kind of contribute to the company. But the problem I see with that is that many of these acts may never fully play out to reach their full potential because you ain't having enough TV time or meaningful pay-per-view exposure. A good example for me is like Josh Alexander. He feels like someone who should naturally sit in the upper mid-card and compete for titles. After all, he was kind of main eventer in TNA long time and coming to AEW, but now he's been with AEW for almost a year. I think he debuted in the Owen Hart Cup last year as a surprise opponent for Hangman. He lost his first match, and by now, he hasn't had a proper singles feud in nearly a year. Instead, for me, he often comes across like a high-end enhancement talent. And it bugs me to say that because I think the highest of Josh Alexander, and I can definitely imagine that over time, and we had that with the AEW locker room, situations like that could create some frustrations. Is it simply the downside of having such a stacked roster where some great talents inevitably fall through the cracks? Or do you think AEW might actually need to be more selective with their signings going forward?
As a young company, I'm sure it's exciting to sign all of the hot, independent talent that's around, the international talent that's around. Eventually, you're gonna need to be picky and selective. I hate to say that. For me back then, in 2021, the initial giant spending spree, my solution in my head is do another show. And now we're there, right? We have Collision. We have Ring of Honor. Right? And it still feels like it's no longer enough to really feature all of the talent that AEW has. I look at WWE, and I also think that there's a problem there in terms of the inability to let everyone flourish, the ability to let all of the acts properly play out. But I do think the problem is more apparent in AEW. I think you picked a fantastic example in Josh Alexander. I want to provide you like a question here, like with the current kind of like hot act that they signed in Tommaso Ciampa. We could talk about War Dogs too, but Tommaso Ciampa, he's hot right now. They're doing stuff with him. I once again bring the question, will it be like this in 6 months? Or will the hotness of Tommaso Ciampa, when it dies down, will then he get to put by the wayside and be featured less and his character arcs not completed on TV, like what seems to happen a lot with a handful of the characters that we have in AEW?
And the problem is with all those characters that seem to not get enough TV time to tell their stories, they'll get put into stables. And that's okay because then you kind of seem like a side character, but you're still on TV, right? But the problem is, and that's what bugs me the most, is that you're not capitalizing on, hey, you've got trios titles. If you want to present me so much with stables, then present me with a proper trios division so you can get everybody on TV. You don't do that. So why do you sign then so many talents that want to be on TV at all? And with Tommaso Ciampa, to be quite honest, now they did run in Collision tonight an angle where Tommaso kind of turned on Mark Briscoe and had a proper, I would say, DIY-ish heel turn, and that worked. But the problem is if you get lost in a follow-up and he's just then the side character to FTR who he joins forces with, yeah, he'll be in next enhancement talent too. And that's why I always say, hey, you can have hopes for talents that are not properly booked on WWE television, but nobody gives you the security that another company can do the same when their talented roster is already stacked. This is why I hate the concept of signing away so much indie talent so early from both of these companies, because with a flourishing indie scene like in the early 2000s with Ring of Honor and everything, you could pick from the top and let everything down there evolve and people earn their money and flourish. But from my perspective, AEW and WWE are doing the completely same thing. They kind of trying to outdo each other, sign talents away that nobody gets his hand on them, even though they would probably have a better time on the indies. And that's what also came to my mind with several other talents like Josh Alexander, Tommaso Ciampa, by now, probably Ciampa, in a year away. Another point that comes along and that you've already mentioned is that AEW's big pay-per-views often try to include as many talents as possible. Yeah,
it's crazy. It's insane.
Because of that, we sometimes end up with cards that feature 10 matches or even more. And as you can imagine, when we kind of do a reaction stream to that and do a live review afterwards, we're sitting here at still 9 o'clock in the morning. So yeah, that's the whole point with AEW pay-per-views. And I know you've actually attended AEW shows live before because we've met on one. So I'm curious about your perspective on this. Is that ever a turn off for you?
That's such an interesting question. Had you asked me that like 3 years ago, I would have said, yeah, I don't need a show that long. But now I look at WWE trying to charge me $5,000 for 4 matches. And now I go, AEW, thank you for the value for the dollar. So it's almost like WWE is making AEW show feel a lot more valuable, like in terms of bang for my buck. There was a time where I would have said, yeah, this is way too much. I get it. You want to give me as many matches. I don't need this many matches. Now I kind of want as many matches as I can get because WWE is trying to give me such few matches, unfortunately. I think more than anything, in terms of like me as a fan, I like it. The more wrestling, the better. That's fine. I think the problem with those really long shows is that inevitably there are matches that I'm just too tired for. You know, I was front row for AEW Forbidden Door 2023. I got some amazing matches. I got to see Will Ospreay versus Kenny Omega. I couldn't make the entire arena couldn't make any noise at the end of the show because it was 6-7 hours by the end of it for Okada versus Danielson. We were too tired for Okada versus Danielson. So there are some problems in terms of pacing and keeping the crowds properly engaged. Luckily, the shows are generally very good to keep the crowd alive. But you know what? Yeah, I know I took a long way to answer your question. I like the long pay-per-views now because WWE gives me so little now.
But I would agree upon probably AEW just do one pay-per-view more in January or February and just turn down a little bit on the cards. Less is often more. But maybe to wrap this topic up, do you see all this of a natural development in the US mainstream wrestling scene where the two big companies are trying to outdo each other with leaning into very different philosophies? WWE, despite having a huge roster, you've mentioned that as well, often structures its shows in a way where the premium live events feature fewer matches while talents who don't make the PLE are highlighted more prominently on the weekly shows. Meanwhile, AEW, with its very large roster and the clear intention to feature as many talents as possible, sometimes ends up stretching its shows longer and longer and longer, even going into 20-minute overruns on TV every week. So do you think the contrast is just the natural result of competition between the two companies, each trying to differentiate itself in how it uses its roster and present its product?
That's a great question. I think it comes down not necessarily how they use their roster, but more how they present the product. With AEW routinely wanting to have that like 25-minute main event that goes over time. You look at AEW pay-per-views and the last like 4 matches almost always are over 20 minutes long, right? Women's World Championship, some big blood feud, World Championship. The tag titles usually take a good chunk of time depending on who the champions are, if it's the Young Bucks, etc. I think that the way that they're trying to present themselves is a wrestling show. Meanwhile, WWE is an entertainment experience. And that in itself, for me as a fan, I love, because it's an alternative and it gives me the ability to watch a different type of product depending on what I'm feeling on that particular week. Or maybe I want to watch all the shows so that and because I watch all the shows, I don't want them to feel the same, because otherwise it starts to get repetitive. It's part of the reason why in like the late 2000s or early 2010s, I stopped watching Impact. Why? Because it just became a worse Monday Night Raw. They just tried to be the same as WWE. Meanwhile, with AEW, with Dynamite, Collision, their pay-per-views, it feels so different because they are so focused on the wrestling aspect of the show that I can watch Dynamite while still watching WWE and not feel like I'm watching the same product. So I do think that the way that they are presenting themselves is part of the reason for this, like this type of divide that they have in terms of like how the show feels. And for me as a fan, it works.
Good one. That's probably the best way to wrap up this topic. So thank you, Santi, for that. So now we kind of move into a little bit of more questions and answers from your side, and we always have a guest topic, mostly in the format. But I want to use the guest format this week to take the chance to get a bit more personal with you, because how often do you really get the opportunity to have this kind of conversation on that level? At the beginning of the show, I described you as the wrestling optimist, because that's how you kind of resonate with me. So I'd like to start with a pretty fundamental question. Even if some people out there might already know the answer, what was it about wrestling that captured you as a kid and made you become a fan in the first place? And what is it about wrestling that still resonates with you today?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, as a kid, what resonated with me was definitely like the fact that it felt like I was watching a movie every week, where I was seeing characters grow and develop, like, oh, he's the good guy, he's the bad guy. I just liked seeing this bigger than life story play out in front of my eyes. And I love that it ended, all the story, the telling, the talking in movies. Okay, cool. They just talk. Here in wrestling, they talk and then they do this crazy thing for the next 20 minutes. They're doing all these flips, all of these slams. So I just fell in love with like how bigger than life and how ridiculous what I was watching was. And as I got older, I started to appreciate more the difficulty of the actual wrestling portion. I started to appreciate technical wrestling, high-flying lucha libre, and realizing that there were different styles to fall in love with. So as a kid, it was the bigger than life characters. And you see that with kids nowadays, right? So why they love Jey Uso, like, oh, this really cool guy doing this thing that's making everybody dance. That I love that stuff as a kid as well. Now as an adult, what I resonate with is being able to appreciate the art in the ring a lot more and seeing different styles blend. My favorite match of all time is Rey Mysterio versus Kurt Angle at SummerSlam 2002.
Oh, yeah.
And that's two totally different styles. And nowadays, that's my favorite thing, seeing different styles mesh together and seeing how they make a match with different styles. So that's what has me enthralled today, is just watching the actual magic in the ring and how it's made with different styles of wrestling.
It's kind of crazy that it compares very well to my experience, because the first segment I ever saw was the big Eddie Guerrero Brock Lesnar segment before No Way Out, where
Nice.
they talked about addiction, and then the No Way Out match, got it on tape from a classmate, and that was just a hero's journey. That was always what resonated with me. But as you've mentioned, it's exactly the same. When I got a little bit more into indie wrestling in the early 2000s, seeing Ring of Honor and seeing different styles and what they can do, and how a product in the ring without the big entertainment cameras on it being still so entertaining, and the art form itself, and how you can change up some spots that you kind of seen on other matches but now get back to and try to do different things with that. That's still what also helps me, and that's big appreciation, I think, from both of our sides to the sport of wrestling. And I guess also that kind of evolution we've briefly talked about as a fan also changes how you look back at different periods of wrestling. Do you feel a particular sense of nostalgia for any specific era? I might know the answer. A time where you look back and think that was the best period and maybe things will never quite feel the same again?
I will always die on the hill of the Ruthless Aggression era. Now, of course, I started watching in the Ruthless Aggression era, so obviously super biased. I get it. I'm not going to lie. But I feel like there is something about the Ruthless Aggression era that doesn't exist in any other era. In that, dude, WWE was forced to experiment so much. Because Stone Cold left, The Rock left. Then they tried to do the thing where, hey, let's find our new guy, Brock Lesnar. And then he left. So they're just like, okay, let's try Eddie. Let's try JBL. Try Benoit. Try RVD. Try John Cena. Try Randy Orton. Try Edge. Try Batista. Let's make Triple H the guy for a long time. Goldberg, let's give him the title. It was just constantly trying different people in the main event scene to see who can become the star of the future. And that's how they were able to find John Cena and Batista and Edge and Randy Orton to become their next stars of the future. We were talking about Braun Breaker and like, yo, when are they going to make this guy the star of the future? That's something that to me is missing today. Roman pointed it out in that podcast, right? Back then, they had no choice. They had to experiment. Now it feels like they're afraid to experiment with those new names. So to me, the Ruthless Aggression era is my favorite because, heck, this pay-per-view, I could maybe see Bob Holly beat Brock Lesnar. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe they want to experiment.
It's exactly that. And, you know, I think that this is why always when people like us that are heavily influenced by the Ruthless Aggression era talk about, why not make Oberfemi the world champion on his debut episode of Raw when he comes to... You know, this is why it resonates so much with us, because we've seen things like that. We've seen a Brock Lesnar debut on after WrestleMania, being the world champion already at SummerSlam after 4 months, winning out on everything because we've seen it. We've also seen title reigns from Triple H, the Reign of Terror, where you experimented with different guys beating Triple H only to come back to him, to come back to him, to come back to him. This is why we also say, hey, maybe then just play hot potato for 3 months with a different champion. Try it out. You'll never find it if you never try. I think that's also what comes from our generation, right?
Yeah, look, I didn't like it, but I appreciated when they gave the title to Jey Uso. I was like, okay, yeah, let's try it. What's the worst that could happen? And then he loses it in 2 months. No harm, no foul. Go back to Gunther. They didn't like Jey Uso as champion, but at least they tried. At least they experimented. That, to me, is the magic of the Ruthless Aggression era, where it's like, okay, try it. Doesn't work, go back to Triple H. Sure, whatever. Until we can find the guy that can really take it from Triple H, which ended up being Batista, who became a megastar. So you do find the gems, the diamonds, if you experiment. But if you don't experiment, how are you going to find them?
Exactly. And that's also funny, because when Jey Uso initially won the Royal Rumble, I said, hey, it's okay. It's something different, something nobody expected. And that was fine for me. I wasn't a particular fan of the reign and everything, but I was a fan of them trying something new. And that's what kind of is missing. And that's where I always say, hey, better something new than something that I've seen 4 or 5 times. And I think people that are still watching the product, as I would say, not the casual fans, as you've mentioned before, wrestling fans like you and I, they probably look back at that time and say, hey, can we probably just still have a little spice from that era? That's also why I can absolutely agree that that era is still the one that has the magic with it, because you've got great wrestling, you got the larger than life character still in a way with Undertaker and everybody, but the wrestling and the technical stuff and everything was just on another level. But now enough of the emotional deep talk. Let's have some questions from our supporters to end this podcast on a high note. So, question from Cold Smoke 2K. First of all, thanks for the work, both of you. Great to see my two favorite wrestling content creators work together. I think making Cody Rhodes world champion again was totally predictable, and once again makes me believe WWE is in total panic mode before WrestleMania. My question is, how can it be that a company that is bigger than ever with so much financial resources is struggling with their storylines and creative directions so much? With that amount of money and reach, they should be able to produce Hollywood-like blockbuster storylines with film segments, social media hype, celebrities, corporations, and so on. Are my expectations too high?
I think WrestleMania 40 did that for everybody.
That's the problem.
I've made the joke that WrestleMania 40 ruined wrestling for a lot of people. Me and you, we've been watching for a long time, right? So when WrestleMania 40 happened, I literally said on stream, I was like, take it in. You won't see something like this for 10, 15 years. The last time that we saw something like this, Daniel Bryan beating Triple H, going to the main event, winning the whole thing against all of Evolution, the Miracle on Bourbon Street. It took 10 years to get to something like this. Don't expect it next year. Don't expect it the year after that. But people are going to expect it. And I do think that, for the person that wrote in here, I think your expectations are too high. Unfortunately, partly because of WrestleMania, how good things were at the start of the Triple H era. I don't disagree with you. I think WWE should be much better with all of the resources that it has. But I will argue that as bad as WWE is now, I've lived through worse. I've seen much worse. I will take this every year over almost every year of the 2010s. That entire decade, for the most part, was really bad. We're living in a good era compared to some of the stuff that we've watched. It's just that it's just nowhere near as good as 2024.
That's the problem. And you know what comparison I always give is that WrestleMania 40 was like for the whole Marvel franchise Avengers Endgame. The follow-up also in the film industry is so hard to get right. And Disney didn't get it right. WWE didn't get it right. It happens in other genres too. So I think all of our expectations are too high. But to be honest, the whole Bloodline era saga that we've had before was so good to us. I always say, hey, if it's 1 year, if it's 2 years that are not so good, and if you have still angles that you want to talk about, that you're intrigued by, it's cool. If it goes on for another 2 to 3 years, then we probably will have really a problem. But up until then,
about like WrestleMania, one of the things that I laid out to people, I was like, you're crazy if you think we're going to get something like this. First and foremost, you needed Bloodline and Roman Reigns to be dominant for 3 years. You needed Cody Rhodes to leave, back, start a different company, come back, fail at WrestleMania 39 to try again. All right? You needed The Rock to become the most famous person on the planet. To come back and do this segment. You needed John Cena to be in a retirement to come back. You needed 27 years of The Undertaker being the ghost of WrestleMania to make his appearance be like, whoa, The Undertaker. You needed to build the Shield to make the moment of Seth Rollins coming out to the Shield. You needed like 30 years of wrestling to make that moment. So to think that you're going to do it the next year, you're crazy. You're crazy.
You heard it here first, Sandy laid it all out. I can't add to that. Let's probably, our expectations are too high because everything came together to that one singular point in time. So just go back to that time if you have a heavy time right now. Next question, probably a little bit of a shorter one. Ginny66 asks, hey there, here are my questions. What is the storyline you most invested in these days, and what is the storyline that bores you the most, Santi?
The one that bores me the most, MFT, Wyatt 6. I'm done. Let's move on. I'm done. I really am done. What about you? Which one's the one you're most bored by right now?
It's hard. I mean, it's probably not a storyline at all. It's probably the whole women's division besides Toni Storm and Tekla and AEW. That's just something where I see there's so much potential, but you're not doing anything with it, and that's just And to also be honest, what I really am bored by is that the United States title picture is just open challenges. You could have given Ilya a proper storyline. You could now give, Carmelo a proper storyline. You don't do that. That's just something. And to me, that likes good wrestling, at some point, there is the full stop where I say, hey, enough of the wrestling. I need a little bit of storyline. That's just something that bores me. But about exciting storylines, I think storyline-wise, AEW, it's the Hangman MJF thing and how it will play out with Hangman risking his world title opportunities in the future. And on the WWE side, give me Roman and Punk every week, and I'll every day of the week. What about you?
You picked my two. I would agree exactly with that. To add one, I'm excited every week now to see what Danhausen is going to do, what he's going to curse. I love comedy in wrestling. I love it. I love it. And now knowing that he's going to have something with The Miz, I'm like, oh my goodness, perfect. We've talked about just do the easy thing sometimes. Just give Braun Breaker the world title. Just do it. This is the easiest thing they could have done. The Miz and Danhausen's like, thank you. Thank you for using your brain.
And he's chronically online, so he's also kind of adding to that storyline. I've seen him, hey, Miss, I need a pull right there, blah, blah, blah. He's just awesome. He's just awesome. And I think for what the debut was and how you followed it up with genius, because he said about himself, hey, my debut was so big and everybody kind of thought in another way. So they did it perfectly. Next question from Silverster. Hello, Aaron and Santi. First of all, I'm personally happy to hear you, Santi, here at Spotfight. Follow you on Insta, and I'm always curious about your reactions. I would have the following questions. How did you like the WWE shows from Germany and the atmosphere or the crowd? Can we keep up internationally?
Yeah, you guys are a great crowd. If you compare to any American crowd, you guys are the greatest crowd of all time. So I'll take a German crowd every single day of the week. Yeah, of course. I would say that there are crowds that are that sure they make more noise, they sing more throughout the show, but I'll always compare to an American crowd or a Canadian crowd, and we suck. So I'll happily take a German crowd every day.
I'm very curious to see what the Italian people will be doing at Clash in Italy, because when you have stadium atmosphere in Italy, they sing so beautifully, everything. So that will be also a different thing. In Germany, it's always auf die Fresse, very harsh people. So it doesn't feel the same. But moving on to Robbie D. Rob's question, that also kind of goes hand in hand with questions about Germany in general. Hello, you two. My questions for Santi. I would be interested to hear his personal opinion about our evil European Gunther. What is the reaction like in his streams when der Ringgeneral is active in the ring or on the mic? Best regards from the capital of Germany.
My community loves Gunther. They adore Gunther. They love trolling me by sending me photos of John Cena smiling and tapping out because they know that he's my favorite. But I love Gunther. I think he's fantastic. I think the only problem with Gunther is not even Gunther's problem. It's WWE's inconsistency with Gunther. How can I believe that Gunther can, retire Goldberg, retire Cena, retire AJ Styles, kill Dragon Lee, but it takes him 20 minutes to beat Pat McAfee? He taps out to Jey Uso. There's just a lot of inconsistency with how they book Gunther, but I think Gunther is absolutely amazing. I wish he got fatter though. Fat Gunther,
Fat
Walter.
Walter.
Oh my goodness, those chops from Fat Walter were amazing.
Oh yeah, he's still a staple piece in the European community, all over the place. But you know what I like about Gunther by now is that there is an evolution a little bit. He doesn't feel like the ring general that came over from Europe anymore. He's evolving into a little bit more of a like WWE character, because he never beat anybody dirty before, but now he does, because he kind of is more egoistical, more theatrical. He resonates with me more like not a European, straightforward, no BS heel. He's more now like I want to make my way to the top, and I wanna have the heat for everything that you give me. And that is something that sticks out to me. But I have the same problem regarding, for example, the sleeper. If the sleeper is such a big weapon, why do you need to make it kind of 5 minutes long as how until AJ taps or something? That's just something that I really don't like. Next question from Scholchen. Hey Santi, this weekend is WXW 16 Karat Gold tournament in Germany, the biggest wrestling tournament in Europe, where the likes of Gunther, Sami Zayn, McIntyre, Rhodes, and many more household names have competed. What's your opinion on WXW, if you ever heard of it, and would you consider going to the 16 Karat tournament in the future?
I have not heard of it. So that's exciting. I'd like to definitely tune in. I love finding new wrestling promotions. I recently found this Indian promotion, WXM, which has been a lot of fun.
Cool.
So you have just pointed me in the direction of something that I now have to watch. I promise next time I'm here, we'll talk about it.
Cool. And now we have the promise that there will be a next time you'll be here. So I heard that you probably are enjoying your time by now. So that is very cool. We have 2 questions remaining. From Yesman Punk 1962. What do you think of AEW's development since day one? Big question, I know.
Development since when?
Since day one.
Oh,
so
since day one. Yeah, it's growing pains, right? Like they started so hot, right? And then I remember like 2022, 2023, it's to me it started getting less interesting, kind of around when Cody Rhodes left. But I always remind people, right? Like this is a company that is only now coming up to 7 years old. WWE is like 70 years old, right? I'm willing to put money that AEW's first 7 years were better than WWE's first 7 years. That AEW's first 7 years were better than TNA's. They were better than WCW's. In terms of their pace, in terms of their growth, yes, it's been sometimes up and down. They're doing amazing. No ifs, ands, or buts. They are doing amazing. What they've done to change the landscape of North American wrestling, what they've done in terms of giving wrestlers another home that isn't only WWE, where they can be on television and be a mainstream wrestler, is amazing. Their growth and their trajectory to me is limitless. I think they're gonna imagine what a 70-year-old AEW could look like. It could, right? Just think about it in that context, how young they still are and what they're doing with only being 7 years old.
That's a good answer. I can't even add to that. I think it's the same, because people are always comparing those two companies as if they are the same. They are not. They're absolutely not. And also from a corporate perspective, you have so many roles in WWE that nobody really fits in AEW. From a marketing perspective, they have so much to learn to kind of promote even the events in the cities they're in. You're here still from Australia. Hey, we haven't going to have a big show in Sydney. Yeah, nobody knows in Australia. So there are growing pains. And I think they were on display for most of the time they're existing, but I think they're getting better also in storytelling, because some of the critique was always, it's just matches. By now, no, it's not. It's not anymore.
Anyone that says that, they don't watch it. They believe somebody that said that, and they themselves don't watch the product, because okay, sure, sometimes there are matches for the sake of matches, but there are absolutely big overarching stories. My goodness, the Hangman Adam Page story where he finally won the world title at All In, that's a WrestleMania moment right there. That was amazing.
It was. And for those people who paid attention, it also felt like the big payoff that we probably didn't get in so many years. And now last question remaining, a bit of a funny one, from Tolga is my name 93. Santi, if you had to fight a wrestling star, who would you choose? Hornswoggle, El Torito, James Ellsworth do not count. Who would you get in the ring with?
Okay. Wow. That's tough. I mean, Finn Balor loses to everyone, so I think I could probably beat Finn Balor.
yeah, maybe the same counts for Josh Alexander by now. So,
yeah, I mean, they lose to everyone, so I'm sure they could lose to me too.
Oh, that was a good funny last question. Yeah, so that's the end of the first international Hauptkampf. Thank you so much, Santi, for attending and having that wonderful time with me. I appreciate it very much, and I hope we can speak in the future and make that happen again. I know you're a very busy man, so thanks for sparing your time with me. Thanks for entertaining. Thanks for making me laugh. Really, I know I haven't laughed like that in a long time, so thank you so much. From my perspective, that's it. Please tell us in the comments if you enjoyed the podcast, and for all those English people, if you ever heard of Spotfight before, probably. And yeah, let us know if we should repeat something like that in the future. So I say goodbye by now. Have a good one. The last words are Santi's, and then we're going offline.
I'm glad that Aaron can prove to the world that I watch AEW because we met at an AEW show, first and foremost. Just because I don't make AEW videos doesn't mean I don't watch it, and he's proof of it, okay? Thank you very much for having me on. Hopefully we can bring over some of your German audience to come check out my YouTube videos, youtube.com/Mr. Santizap. I post YouTube videos every single day. If you don't speak English, there is an auto translation. You know, you can watch my videos in weirdly dubbed AI German if you would like. But yeah, come check it out. And thank you again for having me.
Thank you. Have a good one. Goodbye.